Hello and welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
And I guess we should start off, Ron, by thanking everyone who participated in our Facebook Live event we had this past Monday. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was. And according to our Facebook page, it was a rather successful venture for us. Let me grab my computer here.
All right.
It is showing so far. And by the way, if you weren't able to join us live on Monday night, just go to the FAIRtax Guys Facebook page, facebook.com/the FAIRtax Guys, and voila, there's our video. And you can watch it as many times as you want. But it's had over 2,200 views, which we're very pleased with. It says that the people reached is 8,800, almost 9,000 people, which we're very pleased. I mean, you know, we would like it to be several hundred thousand.
Oh, yeah.
And
we'll
working
get there
on that. But we'll take what we can get.
All right. And so we're going to try to do another one, and our tentative date for this next one is exactly a month later on March the 6th. Again, that's a Monday night. That is not official, though. We will announce it officially when we put it together. But that's kind of the time frame what we're looking at to do another one, and hopefully you can join us for that.
Yeah, that'll be good. We have to make sure everybody's available. Not only Bob and I, but Randy, too.
Yeah, Randy Fisher, the unsung hidden hero of the Facebook Live events, who's online, you know, answering a lot of the questions online. We sure appreciate Randy's help on all this stuff. But this came up, we were doing this, we were looking at congress.gov, which is, of course, a website that is put up by the government, by Congress, where you can go in and check out on the status and see what all kind of bills have been introduced and what the status of each one is, whether it's been introduced or passed the House, passed the Senate, sent to the President, so forth and so on. And there's a search bar there where you can look on income tax. And we did that, and we found like 257 hits on that search on Monday night on our Facebook Live. It's up to over 270 now. Now, not all of those are proposed changes to the income tax code. Let's be clear about that.
But they're tax-related.
But it is related to the tax thing. And we thought it would be cool to go through that and just kind of see what's lurking in there, because Congress has got this way of conducting their business, supposedly, you know, above board and in the sunlight where everybody can see it, but very few people actually go to congress.gov and check it out and look at it. So, as we say, we've done it so you don't have to. We'll see what is there in this congress.gov, and we found some very interesting stuff, shall we say.
Yeah, I want to reemphasize what Bob said is, now, as of this recording, Congress has been in session, the new Congress, 115th, has been in session just about 1 month. And there are how many proposals, Bob?
Right now, it's up to like 280 that, of course, again, not all of those are proposed changes to the tax code, but there's 280 proposals that are related to, you know, income taxation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of key.
It's kind of bizarre.
So I'll tell you what we did. Ron, I gave you a homework assignment. Each of us were going to go through this congress.gov site independently and separately and see what we come up with and find the most interesting stuffs that's in there that Congress is doing with your money on your time, and you probably don't know about it. So being the gracious host that I am, I'm going to let you go first. What did you find at the top of your list that was interesting on congress.gov there?
Okay, well, this one, I just love this one. Its title is No Windfalls for Government Service Act. Okay, nice short title. Now, get this. This is the summary, okay? The summary says, this bill amends the Internal Revenue Code to establish a $1 million lifetime limitation on the non-recognition of a taxpayer's gains from the sale of property pursuant to a certificate of divestiture to comply with conflict of interest requirements for certain federal government positions.
You want to translate that into English?
Please don't make me read that again. If I have to read that again, I think my head will explode.
Oh, but that's the kind of thing that Congress is doing right behind our backs and right under our noses, and we're not paying attention.
The problem is, I don't know what it means.
But it's probably going to be law someday, sometime.
Now, how many pages to the tax code? Now, this is proposed, and that doesn't mean that Congress will actually act on it or pass it. But if it were passed and became part of the tax code, how many pages would that increase our tax code? I shudder to think.
Oh, mercy. All right, you want to hear my top dog here?
Yeah, go.
I found H.R. 540. Now, this was introduced by a representative in, Rhode Island David Cicilline, I think is how you pronounce his name. It's called the Presidential Tax Disclosure Act of 2017. Now, Ron, we have talked time and again about how the IRS is weaponized against the political opponents of whoever's in power, and in this case, this is somebody trying to come the other way because President Trump came under a good bit of a criticism for not releasing his tax returns, which are under audit, by the way. And so this H.R. 540, the bill requires any individual holding the office of president to submit federal tax returns to the Office of Government Ethics, and the individual must submit each return filed with the IRS for any year ending while you are in office, and each return filed with the IRS for 3 years before you assumed office. So they want to see your tax returns for 3 years prior to becoming president and every year you are president. And after receiving these things, the Office of Government Ethics must make the returns publicly available on the Internet and to submit the returns to specified congressional committees. So I tell you, that looks to me like weaponization of the IRS against a political opponent. And that's what they're doing with your money, folks.
Well, and it begs the question, what about the IRS? Don't these people submit their tax returns to the IRS? And if there's a problem, the IRS, will especially people like Trump, because the IRS actually has a special division for super wealthy people, and they comb their tax returns. They go over them with a fine-tooth comb. So can't we trust the IRS? Apparently not. Apparently these folks want everybody, and this could work both ways. I mean, depending on, who wins the presidency. They don't trust the IRS to tell you if there's a problem. No, they want their, full disclosure. Well, what happened to the, privacy? I mean, why? I don't care if you're running for office. I mean, you lose a lot of privacy when you are running for office. But, is it required that we just, open everything up?
Oh, mercy. And there's another little addendum in this thing, H.R. 540 as well. It says you can't redact a thing. Nothing may be redacted from these returns except for Social Security tax identification and account identification numbers. They'll let those things stay. But, we have been talking about why the current income tax system needs to be replaced with a fair tax. Now, this will not happen under the fair tax because, guess what? There are no income tax returns to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
No more IRS. You cannot weaponize it against your political opponents. And it just all goes away. So that's why the fair tax is so much superior to this current income tax system. And we've been hitting on that for a long time. We're going to continue to hit on it until we get the fair tax passed into law.
I've said it before. The income tax has caused this country to become a nation of people who are obsessed with what other people make. All right, let's mind our own business, okay?
All right. What else you got on your list over there?
Okay, this one, Bring Jobs Home Act. Okay, this is actually a co-legislation in the House and the Senate. It's H.R. 685 in the House and S. 247 in the Senate. And the summary is this bill amends the Internal Revenue Code to 1. Grant business taxpayers a credit for up to 20% of insourcing expenses occurred for eliminating a business located outside of the United States and relocating it within the United States. And 2, deny a tax deduction for outsourcing expenses incurred in relocating a business outside of the United States. The bill requires an increase in the taxpayer's employment of full-time employees in the United States in order to claim the tax credit for insourcing expenses.
So in other words, they're telling you will get a tax credit if you bring an outsourced business back to our shores, and you get nothing if it goes the other way. And even when you bring that that business back into our shores, that you have to employ so many people in order to qualify for it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and the sentiment for wanting to bring jobs back, it's a great sentiment, but why are the companies choosing to outsource some of their work? Because the tax code is killing them.
Amen.
The tax code is driving businesses away. And we're having a tremendous problem. So there is a better way to entice businesses to stay in this country.
Yeah, let me ask you, which is a better enticement, a 20% tax credit like that or a corporate tax rate of 0?
Yeah, let's see. Let me think about that. Okay, 0. Yeah, I'll go with the corporate tax rate of 0 because that's what the fair tax does. The fair tax is a consumption tax on the final consumer. There's no other taxes before that because when you start adding taxes to the various stages of production, you increase the cost of making the product or service.
But Ron, don't you think these multi-billion-dollar corporations ought to pay taxes on their profits?
Yeah, and every time they do, we pay for it. All right, Neil Bortz used to say this over and over again. Corporations don't pay taxes. It's a cost of doing business, just like the raw materials or labor or whatever, and they pass the cost on to the consumer every time. Either that or they cut labor, which costs the consumer, some people their jobs. But usually it goes into the cost of the product or service. We pay for it every time.
Customers, the shareholders, and the employees are the individuals that end up paying these corporate taxes and the tremendous compliance costs that go along with the current income tax system.
Oh, yeah.
And all that gets passed on, and all of that goes away with the fair tax.
So this bill here, it's a nice idea wanting to bring jobs back, but there's a much, much easier way to do it.
Okay, I got my next one here, and this is just the way that you can tell there's a lobbyist behind this one for sure. How the people with the best lobbyists get the tax break. This is S-48 that has been introduced into Congress. This bill amends the Internal Revenue Service Code to allow a tax credit of up to $500 once every 5 years for the purchase of a hearing aid that is authorized under the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act for commercial distribution and intended to be used by the taxpayer or a dependent. So if you buy the hearing aids that this particular lobbyist represents, I bet, you get a tax break.
What'd you say?
Put your batteries back in there.
Yeah, I think the battery popped out of my hearing aid when you read that one.
This is another example of how the current system that we've got allows the government to pick winners and losers and play favorites and do a little social engineering, which was never the Founding Fathers' intent when you're just talking about funding the government, which is really all the tax system ought to do. But you get $500 or a tax credit up to $500 for once every 5 years if you buy this particular hearing aid.
And where does it stop? Okay, so,
that's no fair. That there's another proposal sometime that lets your golf clubs get deductible and my bowling balls not.
Exactly, yeah. That's exactly what I had in mind. I mean, where does it end? I mean, you can keep amending this tax code until it's millions of pages long.
We're over 70,000 plus. Well, that's the tax code plus a lot of the tax court decisions, supporting documentation and supporting regulations that go by that. But it is just incredibly complex. And our representatives keep playing favorites and keep selling these tax favors to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
The system is corrupt. It needs to go away. We need to yank the whole thing out by the roots and replace it again with the fair tax.
Exactly. Yep. Okay.
Next item.
You want another one? Let's see. This one, I actually put a question mark by it. It's H.R. 488. It's co-legislation. H.R. 488 in the House and S. 143 in the Senate. It's called the Military Spouse Job Continuity Act of 2017. This bill amends the Internal Revenue Code to allow the spouse of a member of the armed forces, military spouse, who moves with such member to another state under a permanent change order of station, order a tax credit up to $500 of qualified relicensing costs incurred with such spouse. So the spouse has to move with their military, member, and let's say they're a real estate agent in one state and they have to get relicensed in another state, and they want a tax credit. Okay, how about we forget doing this with the tax code and just reimburse the military person? When I was in the military and the Navy wanted me to move, fortunately I had made enough rank that the military paid for my moving expenses. Okay, that was a long time ago. They can still do that. Forget the tax code. Just reimburse the people directly.
Yeah, but that's another case of you get a break that I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, another flaw in the system where some people get a break. And I'm not arguing that these folks don't deserve the break. That's not the
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
But
we need to support our military
but
people.
The point is that the system gives breaks to certain people or certain classes of people that other people don't get.
Yeah.
That is not fair. The fair tax is fair. It treats everyone exactly the same at the cash register.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And again, they could very easily take care of that. If that's a problem, and I can see where it is, then it should be taken care of within the military, not within the tax code.
All right. This is probably one of my favorite ones here that I came across in going through Congress.gov. It's H.R. 29. It was sponsored by Bob Goodlatte, I believe is the way you pronounce his name, a Republican from Virginia. H.R. 29 is the Tax Code Termination Act.
Ooh.
Now listen to this. This bill terminates the Internal Revenue Service Code of 1986 after December 31st, 2021, about 4 years from now, except it will allow the self-employment taxes, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, that's FICA, Social Security taxes, and railroad retirement taxes remain in effect. And a two-thirds majority vote in Congress is required to change this termination date. Now, this bill declares that any new federal tax system should be simple and fair and 1, apply a low rate to all Americans, 2, provide tax relief for working Americans, 3, protects the rights of taxpayers and reduces tax collection abuses, 4, eliminates the bias against savings and investment, and 5, promotes economic growth, job creation, and 6, does not penalize marriage or families. The new federal tax system must be approved by Congress in its final form by July 4th, 2021. All that according to H.R. 29. Good idea. He just needs to figure out how to make all that happen. And we can tell you, Mr. Goodlatte, H.R. 25, fair tax, co-sponsor it.
Well, and the other thing that occurs to me, they're going to leave in place the payroll deduction.
Yeah,
the
FICA
withholding
taxes will stay there.
Well, that's the most regressive tax we have. They're talking, people are very concerned, and rightfully so, about the working poor, the people at the bottom of the income scale. And the payroll tax withholding and FICA are the most regressive because they are constant percentage, no matter how much or how little you make. So it has much more of an effect on the people who are just getting by. So why are they, there's a lot of language in there about helping people, but that doesn't really help them.
Yeah, but it's nice to know that this guy at least recognizes that the current tax code has to be terminated.
Yeah, that's good.
It must go away.
But terminate the whole thing. Don't leave pieces of it there.
Yeah, this is the repeal without a replacement yet.
Yeah.
H.R. 25 and S18 this time, the fair tax does both of those things. But I love it that he declares that it has to apply a low rate to everybody, provide tax release for working Americans. Not going to go through the whole list again. But he recognizes what's wrong with the current tax system. We need to get him on board with the fair tax. So if you live in Virginia, and I'm not sure which district this guy is from or what, but if Bob Goodlatte is your representative, get on to him. Tell him to co-sponsor H.R. 25. Get behind the fair tax because it accomplishes everything that he says needs to be accomplished with the new tax system.
I noticed it doesn't say anything about repealing the 16th Amendment, does it?
No, it does not.
No, so you can... It'd be a nice gesture, but you know what the tax lobbyists would do? They would celebrate such a legislation because they get to start all over again.
Yeah, that's what Paul Ryan and the Better Way is doing. That they are not really getting rid of the entire tax code. They're just tweaking on it again. Yeah. And I love your Tax Lobbyist Full Employment Act of 2017 is what we're dealing with on,
Job Security
on the Better
Act.
Way.
Yep, Tax Lobbyist Job Security Act of 2017. That's really what Paul Ryan's plans amounts to. But
do you ever get the idea that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing up there when you've got a guy in here in Virginia saying, I want to get rid of the tax code, but he is not a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 that will do exactly what he says he wants to do? We'll send Steve Hayes up there to talk to him. Your turn.
Okay. This one is pure politics. It's called the Fairness in Taxation Act. And whenever you hear fairness, hang on to your hats.
Let me guess, the income taxes go up for rich people.
Oh, Bob, you're a genius.
Yes,
Either
I know.
that or you've been doing this for a while.
Oh, go ahead.
This bill amends the Internal Revenue Code to 1, increase individual tax rates for taxpayers whose taxable income exceeds $1 million, and 2, provide for an adjustment in the capital gains tax of taxpayers whose taxable income is subject to the 45% bracket. So it's tax the rich. They want to tax the rich. The problem is that the current tax system has higher rates for higher incomes, but then in addition to that, they've got all these deductions and exemptions and tax credits and so forth. So the effect of the higher rate for higher incomes is mitigated, and the higher incomes don't really have a higher tax. So anyways, it's just more gobbledygook for our tax code. More pages, and it won't stay in effect because there will be all these deductions and exemptions and credits in there. So it's not much. I don't think this one has much of a chance.
Oh well. Okay, we're running out of time here for this episode of FTPR.
Oh, we're just getting started.
Yeah, I want to get into one more. We may just go ahead and do a second episode on this as well here. But this is something I found. This is companion legislation, H.R. 781 and S. 264. Of course, a lot of these things, they don't have a summary on them. They just got a little title on them, a brief description. And this is one that really wasn't explained in greater detail. But it does say these are bills to amend the Internal Revenue Service Code of 1986 to allow charitable organizations to make statements relating to political campaigns if such statements are made in ordinary course of carrying out your tax-exempt purpose. Now, this is another case. This just galls my gizzard no end when people weaponize the IRS, and they're trying to weaponize the IRS against these nonprofits and don't let them say anything about anybody. And somebody at least is recognizing that needs to change.
Yeah, so that bill essentially says we want to return freedom of speech to these organizations. I thought that was in the Constitution.
Yeah, I'm thinking specifically churches.
Yeah, that's even worse.
That are threatened all the time with loss of their tax-exempt status if the preacher comes up and says, this is a bad idea, vote against it. This is a good idea, support it.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you don't agree with what somebody's political view is, they come in and take your tax exemption. I got an idea. Why don't we do away with tax exemptions?
Yeah.
Why don't we do away with income tax at all?
It's like you said before, Bob, just the fact that somebody thinks we need such a legislation tells you that the current tax code is way out of control. And it's really contrary to the founding documents of this country.
Okay. And the one point that we need to keep hammering on here is the fair tax gets rid of this entire system. You're not going to have these little nitpicking things. You're not going to have all these tweaking around the edges that the folks are doing with. The fair tax is straightforward, retail consumption tax. Everybody pays it anonymously. No unfairness to anybody. Everybody's treated the same. No exemptions, no loopholes, no stuff like that. It is such an elegantly simplistic and wonderful system compared to the garbage that our current system is. Yeah. We have got to get the current system out of the way and the fair tax in its place.
And if you're just hearing about the fair tax for the first time, keep in mind that 45 of the 50 states have a sales tax. Now, unfortunately, some of the states have a sales tax and an income tax. But there are 9 states that have only a sales tax and no income tax, such as Florida, Tennessee, and Texas. I can't remember all the others.
And guess whose economies are doing better than the rest of the world there?
Florida and Texas have 2 of the strongest economies in the world because and part of the reason is they don't have an income tax.
We got a couple of states, I think Georgia's one of them, that is considering scrapping their state income tax.
Yeah,
in favor of a fair tax kind of system.
So, what does that tell you? It tells you that in those situations, the sales tax only idea is a very good idea, and it's very business and economy friendly.
It's economy friendly, and it is, not 100% evasion proof, but much, much more evasion proof than what we've got now.
Oh, yeah. Has anybody heard any news stories about somebody going to, say, Walmart or Sears or Target and buying, say, a new coffee maker, and then suddenly the sales tax agency shows up on the door and said, "We need proof that you paid tax on that coffee maker last week." That doesn't
the
happen.
individual's responsibility; it's the vendor's responsibility, the store, to do that.
And it's automatic. I mean, nobody questions you. You buy something, you go to the cash register, you pay for it. It's done. Your tax is paid, and that's what the fair tax is. The fair tax will simply be a sales tax.
And all your point-of-sale software keeps track of how much tax was collected and how much gets remitted back to the state revenue agency. End of story. Bob Matthews says it takes him 15 minutes to do his state tax. It takes him hours to do his federal tax.
Yep.
For his businesses.
Bob Matthews is a local businessman here in the north central Florida, and one of our fair tax volunteers.
Okay. Well, we got to kind of wrap this up here for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We're running out of time. We may just do another one on this one because there's so many good things there in Congress.gov.
Yeah.
But let's pose the question: how do we help? How do we convince the Congress critters to get rid of the current income tax system and replace it with a fair tax? And I would say that right on the top of the list, we go out to PopVox, POPVOX. Register, tell the account where you are, what congressional district you live in. It knows that from your address. And then go in and tell it you like the fair tax, H.R. 25 and S18.
Yes, that's right. Now, like we said, we were mentioning Congress.gov. That lists the legislation, but there's no feedback. You can set it up to let you know, for instance, as I have done with H.R. 25, whenever there's a new co-sponsor, it sends me an email. But PopVox is the site that you can give feedback to Congress. And PopVox is set up so first you log in, you join it by giving it your name and address. It has to have your address so it knows in what congressional district you're in. Then it knows who your representative and your two senators are. And you go to a particular piece of legislation, you say, I'm in favor of this, I'm against this, and you write in why. That note goes to your representative and your senators. So it's a great way to send feedback, not only on the fair tax, but any pending legislation you can weigh in on. And it's very effective. And the people in Congress watch PopVox because it has all kinds of neat little maps. They can find out, all right, how is this legislation trending in my district? So it's a great tool for Congress, and it's a great tool for us.
And if you want to get personally involved, and we hope you do, Big Solution, not solutions, Big Solution, singular, bigsolution.org. That's where you go to join the army, if you will, that's demanding the fair tax.
That's right. Yep. And we need people also to give feedback to the White House, directly to the White House. And you can do that by going to whitehouse.gov/contact. whitehouse.gov/contact, and there's a form there for you to fill in, with what you think the White House should be working on.
And we'll note that the greatagain.gov site that was part of the Trump transition team, since it's no longer in transition, that site is no longer active. You go straight to the whitehouse.gov to do this. And we would urge everyone to do that. Of course, contact your local Congress critters, senators. Tell them that you want the fair tax.
Yeah, a phone call to your local to your federal representative goes a long way. The phone calls have weight.
Oh, that they do. Of course, it would be really cool if you just show up in person at their office and tell them I want to talk to them.
Yeah.
You'll probably end up talking to a staff
We
person.
have some volunteers that do that.
Yeah, but they, of course, Steve Hayes goes up to Washington every month or so and talks directly to the people.
Steve is the president of our national group. He's a recovering tax attorney. That's how he describes himself. And he's one of the most knowledgeable people about taxation in the country.
Yeah, we're going. I understand that Bob McNair, one of the original founders of Americans for Fair Taxation in Texas, hosted Vice President Pence at the Super Bowl. So hopefully we'll make some progress there as well.
Yes.
But
let's give them our email, Bob.
Okay, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. And, of course, our Facebook page. And hopefully we'll see you at our next Facebook Live event. But that's going to wrap it up. Do it to it for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The Fair Tax Guys, reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the USA.